You may ask, how did this tradition get started? I'll tell you. I don't know. But it's a tradition. And because of our traditions, every one of us knows who he is and what God expects him to do.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Torah. I am Rabbi Tzvi Jacobson with NRM Streamcast, and we'll spend our time talking Torah, learning stuff, and having fun while we learn. You can always send your questions and comments to our mailbag at letstalktorah@gmail.com, and of course, I will answer as many as I can. Or you can go to the webpage, letstalktorah.net. That's letstalktorah.net. The old shows are there. The new shows are there, places for questions, comments. You can even join the show if you want from there. All kinds of good stuff. And of course, the all-important donate button, which we ask you to please press that donate button and make us millionaires. Or if you don't want to do that, help us out. Donations are greatly appreciated. It allows us to continue the amazing work we do here in the beautiful studios of NRM Streamcast. And we are top 10 in FeedSpot's 10 best Jewish book podcasts, and we are at number 5. So I saw a story, and it's just a great intro into this week's Torah portion, just to get us in the mode. It's one of these fascinating Torah portions where it almost seems like there's not so much going on. It's a lot of numbers and stuff and more numbers and addition and more addition. But what's going on? So let's give a look at this story and let's see if we can figure it out. So there was a simple Jewish person, a handyman. He worked in a school in Tveria. If you don't know, Tveria is a city in Israel. And one day, the handyman's son became engaged. And of course, you can imagine any father is so happy, so proud of his son. But he's the handyman in the school. I'm not saying he was the janitor. But, a few people will know. A few people might say Mazel Tov, but these are not his friends. These are not his co-workers. He's barely noticed as he fixes things around the building. In passing to the head of the school, he mentioned that his son became engaged. And the head of the school smiled and said Mazel Tov and continued on to the base medrash, to the study hall. But this head of school was not done. He understood this was a very important time for this handyman, but who would he share it with? He's not in the business world. He's not a well-known person. He doesn't have a lot of friends. And everybody, when a child becomes engaged, right? Everybody wants lots of people to come and congratulate them. They want to feel, I'm sharing my joy. So he went to the front of the study hall, and as each boy was walking in, he informed that boy that, the handyman's son is engaged, and it would mean a lot if you would go congratulate him on this momentous occasion. And every single boy walked over to the handyman, maybe gave him a hug, a handshake, a mazel tov, and the handyman was glowing. And he later came back to the head of the school and he said, I want you to know, you've just made my life so much brighter. And that may be the key to this whole Torah portion. This Torah portion is all about counting. We're going to count the individual tribes. We're going to add up groups of 3. We're going to add up total. We're going to have a separate counting for the Levites, and then an additional counting for the Levites. Lots of counting. And one of the things that we're going to try to bring out is the idea of counting is not to make us one big homogeneous unit. It's really the opposite. When I count you, you have value. You are important. You are somebody worth knowing. You are somebody worth building a relationship with. You are special. That's what the counting is supposed to accomplish. And I think if we start this Torah portion with that focus, it'll just give us a whole new way of diving into the Torah portion. So let's give a quick overview, and then we're going to try to dive in and deal with as many topics as we could. This book, we've started the fourth book, and the book is known as Numbers because there's a lot of counting. As I told my class this week, it used to be, now you have a bank account. Now you go online and it just tells you how many dollars you have in your bank account. But all the stories with the people with their piles of gold and piles of silver, and every night they would come home and they would count how many silver coins do I have and how many gold coins do I have. And that was pretty standard. And it meant that you loved money. If you're busy counting your money all day long, you love your money. If you count other things, you love other things. God loves the Jewish people, and he's going to continuously count us. Now, of course, he knows the number. It's the counting that shows the love, not happening to know the total. So what happens? Moses, Aaron, and the heads of the tribes it's like a census, but it's an interesting census in that we only count men from 20 to 60. Counting men from 20 to 60 is another way of saying we are counting soldiers. And it happens to be debatable if somebody was not fit to be a soldier, did he even count? So that's debatable. But no matter what, the purpose of the count is soldiers. So nobody under 20 and no women. Because children don't belong in an army and women don't belong in an army. That's just not, for multiple reasons, which you can think about it for a little bit, and hopefully you can come up with many of your own reasons that women do not belong on the battlefield. We don't want to be bringing home body bags with women, but they don't belong there. Their job, stay behind, keep a stable home. Men go to war. That is the way the Torah looks at it. Therefore, women are not counted. It has nothing to do with importance. It has to do with you're not a soldier. So whatever the world wants to believe nowadays, that's their problem. Anyways, so we're going to count each tribe individually. And also in this Torah portion, we're learning where everybody camped. There are 12 tribes, because Joseph gets split. We've talked about that. And the Levites will be like the honor guard surrounding the tabernacle. And then there will be 3 tribes on each side surrounding the tabernacle. You basically have the 6 children of Leah, and then you'll have the 2, but really 3 children of Rachel. Then you have another 3 of Zilpah and Bilhah, and then there's 1 extra because Levi is out. So 1, which has to be good, 1 of the children of the maidservants will be counted, will be camped with the children of Leah. Now, so again, it's 3 on each side, but the idea is like an army. So each tribe is their own unit, which we're going to get into what makes each unit special. We can come up with some ideas, but the simplest thing, again, as I told you, we're just giving a quick overview over here. We know in the Army, the Marines, the Navy, the Air Force, the Coast Guard, artillery, there's lots of stuff. There's lots of units. And it's not a question of better or worse. It's a question of where are you? What is your job? Where do you belong? Where are your skills? What should you be doing? So this is your unit. And by the way, once they broke up into this areas, their designated area to camp, that's where you lived. You couldn't decide that, I have good friends in a different tribe, I'm going to relocate my tent. No relocation. Your tent was with your tribe. I mean, I'm not saying you can't go visit. Go visit, no problem. But you're with your tribe. Then the Torah also discusses that each tribe has their own banner. has their own color. Most of the colors would be representative on the breastplate of the high priest, of the Kohen Gadol. Each tribe had a stone, and the flag was the same color as that stone. Some we know, Ruvain is red, Shimon is emerald. So certain colors we know, certain ones we may not be sure what those stones are. It's not so important for us. So every flag had a color, and every flag had some type of picture representative of the tribe. Most of those representations would be based on the blessings that Jacob gave his children. But some type of picture, these were all, and again, we're going to go through some of them. But that meant when you were wandering around, if you weren't sure where your tribe was, you just looked for the flag. You found the flag, and you knew where you belonged. Now, besides each tribe having its own flag, you also had, because each 3 tribes created a bigger unit. Right? We had 3 on the east, 3 on the west, 3 on the north, 3 on the south. So that bigger unit would have its own larger flag. And again, one of the tribes would be considered the head of that group. Like Judah is in charge of his group on the east, and Ephraim is in charge of his group, and Ruvain is in charge of his group, which was, I think, on the north, and Dan was in charge of his group on the west. So you had that also. All right, we're going to talk about what's the big deal about flags, why is it so important. The Levites themselves are counted separately. They're the honor guard. They're also counted with different numbers. They have 2 separate countings. One from 30 days old to, I just think from 30 days old. And they're still way smaller than every other tribe, which we're going to have to talk about why. And they're again counted from 30 to 50 because that's when they did their work, the carrying and the singing and the guarding of the tabernacle. Those jobs was for a smaller group. And again, we have to try to understand why they're so much smaller, because historically that changes. That will change to become much bigger later on in history. But earlier in history, like at this point, comparatively, Judah has 75,000. Dan has 62,000. A whole bunch of them are in the 45,000 range. Menashe is 40,000. And then the tribe of the Levites is like 23,000. And that's counting from 30 days and up. You're even counting the kids. And when you count those that work, it's from 30 to 50, you're like in the 7,000 range. Like a way, way less. Okay. So let's see what we can dive into as we try to break apart everything that's happening in this Torah portion. Okay. So first of all, what is the big deal of a banner? It seems, and it's good timing. The Jewish people saw the guy comes down on Mount Sinai, and he comes with tens of thousands of angels, and these angels were in groups and had flags. So it says the Jewish people desired those same flags. So again, you got to wonder, like, why is this so important? This seems to be a big deal. We want to be mimicking what's happening in heaven. So if in heaven, for some reason, there's flags, we also want flags. We're going to camp around the tabernacle. We're camping around God, like those angels were camping around God by Mount Sinai. We want the same thing. So first of all, one interesting thing to note, there's this concept. It's a very spiritual concept that talks about God's throne. We don't exactly know what that means because God is not a physical being. He doesn't really need a throne. So it's very spiritual. But whatever it is, there's 4 parts. It's called the Merkava. We call it the Maisa Merkava. But it's representative of like the king, like all the kings. You have man, you have the lion, you have the ox, and you have, I think, the eagle. It could be debatable for other things. Each one is like its own king. And wouldn't you know, the four main flags, Judah's the lion. That's pretty straightforward. Ruvain was the one that the Torah points out that he went out into the fields. He didn't steal. When he was bored, he just went out into the fields, and he found this very special flower that he gave to his mother Leah. And when Rachel saw the flower, she wanted the flower, and she gave up her night with Jacob to get that flower. What was that flower? Some say it was just pretty, but some say it was some type of flower that had a medicinal ability to help a lady who was infertile, to help a lady give birth, to become pregnant. Some say it was a mandrake, whatever mandrake is. But the idea of that flower is it happens to look like a person. So the picture on the flag of Ruvain was this picture of a flower looking like a person. Okay, now we got the person part of the Merkava. Joseph is Ephraim and Menashe, breaks up into two, but his animal is the ox. Okay, that's the third part of the chariot or throne, and Dan is the eagle. So this is all representative of what heaven, I want to say, looks like. It's a little bit hard to say what heaven looks like when heaven is spiritual and we're physical, but we do the best we could. I mean, the prophets trying to do it, so we're not terrible. We're just a little clueless. Okay. Another part of this camping, I said we're like soldiers, but it gets really detailed if you look at the numbers. Everybody knows that your frontline soldiers, your big warriors, and perhaps your largest group of soldiers. Judah is the first group. He's in front. Judah, Zvulun, Issachar, and they also, the three of them, make the largest group of the four at about 180,000. Your rear guard is to make sure you don't get, outflanked and attacked from the back, right? That's done. He's like 162,000. And then on the sides, you have your two smaller groups. I don't know, both over 100,000, obviously, because we have to get to the grand total of 600,000. Well, I didn't write down the numbers. Why is it so important that we're representative of soldiers? So interesting enough, because we leave Egypt. Now, by the way, the verse says multiple times we leave Egypt on our armies. And when we went through the Red Sea, we went through 12 separate tunnels. Because soldiers, you go through your own tunnel. You're in your own group. You're not a big mishmash, as we would say. But where are we heading? Yes, we're heading to go get the Torah Mount Sinai. That's like a stopover. But we're heading to the land of Israel. What are we going to do in the land of Israel? We're going there to conquer the land of Israel. Okay, conquer, you need soldiers. So we've created this army because we are going to conquer Israel. Now, it's true that the whole conquering will be miraculous. We will act like we're at war, but we're clueless. We are not professional soldiers. We're going against great nations. And we're acting like soldiers, but at the end of the day, God is taking care of the whole thing. I've been reading up recently, because in Joshua it talks a lot about the wars. I recently got a book with showing archaeologically, which fields they were in. You look at the topography and you can see, makes sense, right? Like, you would have a chariot battle over here. You would walk this way. You would travel that way. When they got blessings by mountains, we have these two big mountains next to each other. They camp in between. It makes it more real. In any case, right? But we are acting as if we're going to battle. A second interesting idea, especially for us, is the central part of the tabernacle, the most holy, the most important part, is the ark. What's in the ark? In the ark is the Torah. Right? In the ark is the Torah, and we're surrounding the Torah. And we have flags like we're going out to battle. And the idea is and the idea is that we are going out to the world. We're going to go out to the world, we're going to march out to the world and introduce the world to Torah. It doesn't mean that we're proselytizing. And Jewish people do not do that, which is interesting because we learn a lot about that coming up now with the Shavuot holidays. So we read the book of Ruth. And one of the reasons we read the book of Ruth is because Ruth converted, so she accepted the Torah, just like we accepted the Torah by Mount Sinai. But if you go into the beginning of the story, so Ruth wants to come back with her mother-in-law, right? Her husband died, her father-in-law died, Naomi has nothing. Naomi's going back to the land of Israel. Ruth says, I want to become Jewish. And Naomi pushes her away. Go home, I have nothing for you, don't hang out with me, you're a great daughter-in-law, you're young, start life over again. She sends her home. Her sister Arpa went home. Ruth, no, I'm coming. And then we see Naomi says a bunch of phrases which basically are said, do you have any idea what you're getting into? Right? If you're going to become Jewish, there's a lot of rules and regulations. Are you okay? Right? There's no backsies. You take these rules and regulations, you got to keep them. And Ruth said, yeah. So she converted. But the rules of conversion, way back, we had a convert on from England. He was great. I wouldn't even know what show it's in. It's hundreds of shows ago, but he was great. But the concept of converting is because somebody wants to. And he looks into it, and he understands what he's getting into, and he has to even practice before he, so to speak, takes the plunge. So when we say we're going out to the world to show them Torah, they can observe. They can see what's going on, but they got to come themselves. The Talmud actually says that it's a claim against the people that lived in Babylonia. They saw thousands of people studying Torah, and they weren't impressed. Like, how could you not be impressed if you saw such a sight? At least be curious, like, what's going on? So I told you we're going to get into a little bit. So an army, every group has its job. So a few of the jobs, interesting enough, like Judah's group, his threesome are wisdom. Yisachar is famous for being great scholars. Even Zvulun is a scholar. Judah certainly great scholars. Reuven's group represents humbleness, because Reuven is the one that admitted that he made a mistake. Right? Reuven admits that he made a mistake, that he moved his father's bed. And he's forever repenting over it. So that concept of repenting, of humbleness, is Reuven's group, right? And that's when we talk about a Jewish army, we don't mean that they have jobs of how to actually physically fight. Because I told you, we're going to the land of Israel. God's doing all the fighting. Yeah, we're marching out there, but it's clear we just have to worry about prayer, and God has to worry about defeating the enemy. Worry is the wrong word. Dun's group, by the way, and Shimon is the teachers, also a sign of humbleness. Dun's group represents wealth. It seems Dun was quite wealthy. And he's unfortunately famous for the 2 golden calves that were set up in the north and south. And interesting, Ephraim happens to be the mighty warriors. That's representative of courage. So you think about it, you have 4 groups. You have wisdom, moral character, courage, and wealth, which, by the way, are qualities that a prophet needs. You can't just become a prophet. A prophet has to be a great, great person. It happens to be he needs wealth also, so people will respect him and listen to him. If he's not wise, we've talked about this in the past, God's not talking to him. If he doesn't have good moral character, like, again, we can't learn from you. And he has to have courage, because he's going to be busy telling everybody repent, you're doing the wrong thing, this is not how you act. People are going to yell and scream and make fun of you. If you don't have that courage, you'll never get up there and do what you're supposed to do. So it is interesting that all those are qualities that we find necessary for a prophet. And that's representative of all the groups together, because that's really the idea. Right? We may not all have all the necessary qualities, but when we put all the qualities together, put everything together, then that brings us to perfection. Okay. It's also interesting to note, talking about the counting, So there's like a brief interruption where it talks about that Moses and Aaron are being counted, and we don't mention Moses' children, but we do mention Aaron's children, except they're referred to Aaron's children, Nadav, Avihu, Elazar and Isamar, are referred to as Moses' children. And even mentions Nadav and Avihu die. There's a lot of questions exactly what's going on over there. First of all, what happened to Moses' children? Like, how come we don't know about them? Right? Where'd they go? Perhaps they weren't as special as these four, Nadav, Avihu, Elazar, and Isamar. Now again, Elazar and Isamar, they take over the priesthood from their father. They must have been very, very special. Perhaps Moses' children under 20, also a possibility. But one of the main focuses that Rashi and others say is because Moses taught Aaron's children, which, by the way, that was the order. In other words, first Moses taught Aaron, then Aaron's children came in and Moses taught the children, then the elders came in and he taught the elders. So teaching someone's children Torah makes you their father. The truth is, it makes you even better than the father, and that we're going to have to talk about another time because the music is playing, and I hope you enjoyed it, short and sweet. Thank you, of course, to all of my wonderful sponsors. Listen, you know I can't do without you. Thank you to the production team. We have Alan in the back. Over at Lectures on Food for Thought. Until next time, I'm Rabbi Tzvi Jacobson. You've been listening to Let's Talk Torah on NRM Streamcast. Until next time, don't forget to think about it.
A million dreams for the world we're gonna make. There's a house we can build. Every room inside is filled with things from far away. Special things I compile, each one.